In Phantom Forces, there's a pseudo-category which I think contains the most interesting weapons in the game. Although quite a few of them aren't viable, I think it's beneficial to bring attention to them so more players try them out. All of these guns can headshot kill at all ranges, but they aren't located in the sniper category. I refer to them as the off-sniper category. Some of the more keen-eyed viewers will notice that I'm not covering secondaries that meet the criteria. I may reserve this for a future video, or I may never come back to this again. Who knows? A quick side note before I start, due to the fact that the Pacific Cold Front update was released after the script was finished, I had to edit some additional information in post. In no particular order, let's go ahead and start with the Gyrojet. One of the main things that catches your eye when you look at the stats of the Gyrojet is its incredibly low velocity. However, once I got the right optic, it seemed to work perfectly fine. This gun has very low recoil and decent RPM, so follow-up shots are pretty easy to get in rapid succession. The Gyrojet's performance improves dramatically beyond 122 studs, since it gains a torso kill. Unlike most weapons in the game, this gun's range is backwards. This was done to simulate the fact that the Gyrojet uses rocket ammunition in real life, so the bullets accelerate after leaving the muzzle. When using the Gyrojet, you don't want to end up at close range against a large group of enemies. It's best to stay back and play less aggressively unless you're using a secondary which can reliably protect you. But at the same time, 122 studs isn't as far as you think, so you can still get a little bit close. To recap, this gun has good long-range performance, especially beyond 122 studs, because that's when the torso kill kicks in, has low recoil, which is good for follow-up shots, 200 RPM for a weapon that could body shot at long range is basically unheard of. And you could load bullets one at a time, which can be useful in some situations. The downsides are its very slow empty reload, incredibly low velocity, bad close range performance, and low penetration. The VPO-209 was a gun that I always avoided due to its low velocity, but after trying the Gyrojet, I realized that that might not be as much of a drawback as I previously thought. Once I figured out the right loadout, I found this gun to be decent for landing headshots at closer ranges, but not that great overall. My main issues while using this weapon were its high recoil and low reserve ammo. Due to the recoil, this gun's not as effective when compared to other semi-autos that can headshot kill. The VPO-209 also only takes ammo from shotguns. It can't even pick up ammo from itself. So this makes it incredibly difficult to replenish your ammo reserves if you're playing on a map where people generally don't use shotguns. You have to simultaneously hope that someone's using a shotgun while also only playing on maps where you have long sight lines so you don't get lasered by autos at close range. Due to these problems, I think a weapon like the Kac SRR or SO9 is a much better option for rapid-fire headshots. And if you don't need headshots at all distances, just go with the Beowulf TCR or the DB Slugs. Way better options. They just work. They just work better. The slightly worse velocity compared to most guns on this list doesn't help either. Since it was difficult to land headshots at distance, I wasn't even taking advantage of its stats. But if you just wanted to try this weapon without having to dedicate yourself to it, you can just grind kills out on the regular AKM. To recap, this gun has a 2-hit kill minimum, good RPM, good penetration, and an 11-round capacity. The downsides are that it runs out of ammo very fast, has low velocity, high recoil, and it requires shotgun ammo. Up next we have the Gyrojet Slugs. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one since I have a full video dedicated to it already, but basically, this gun isn't very good and I can't recommend it. Compared to the previous gun we talked about, it's essentially the same, except you trade half your magazine for a very, very short torso kill range. There are better options available if you want to body shot people at close range, rapid fire. You know, the SPOS 12 with slugs, the DBV with slugs, made a video about that too. Okay, 1858 carbine, better range, not as good RPM, but just it works at all ranges. That's later on this list. Henry 4570, again, not as good RPM, but just way better range, just way more reliable. The torso kill distance on this gun is 30.8 studs. You have to remember that a stud is like nothing. It's very, very short. So at the other end of a room might even be like 40 or 50 studs. If it's a big room, it might even be 100 studs. So 30.8 studs for a torso kill range. Sacrificing all those stats, not worth it. Hardly going to be useful. To recap, this gun has 2 hit kill minimum, so it doesn't require you to hit the torso at max range. Good RPM for its damage, good penetration, and a 30.8 stud torso kill range. However, the downsides are its low velocity, high recoil, 5-round capacity, mediocre reload speed, and the torso kill range, as I said, is often useless. The Kac SRR is a good weapon for hitting headshots in rapid succession. Although it has low velocity, this gun shoots at 400 RPM and its recoil is very snappy. To compare it to weapons not on this list, it's similar to the VSS Venturas, except it trades capacity and RPM, reduced recoil, and the ability to headshot kill at all distances. The main problem I faced with the Kac SRR, besides its low velocity, was the lack of ammo. Due to it being a part of the Magnum ammo pool, arguably the rarest ammo pool in the game, you'll likely not be able to refill your reserves if you run out. Fortunately, you spawn with a decent amount of ammo. To recap, this gun has great RPM and fast recoil recovery. However, if you don't land 2 torso hits at distance, you'll have to shoot a 3rd time. It has low velocity, has a 6-round capacity, low wall penetration, and a rare ammo pool. The SL9 is very similar to the Kac SRR, except it trades out a few stats. The SL9 gets a larger magazine and has endless reserves, but the Kac SRR has better recoil control and ADS time. Honestly, these weapons are very similar and it's up to the user's preference. I personally prefer the SL9 to the Kac SRR, but I find the Kac SRR to be a bit more aesthetically appealing. To recap, this gun has great RPM, infinite ammo, 11-round capacity, but it requires 2 torso hits to kill at distance, so if you miss the torso, you have to shoot a 3rd time, low velocity, and low penetration. The VPO 208 is very similar to the SL9, but in my opinion, the SL9 is better for close range, while the VPO is better for long range. This is because the SL9 has better ammo availability, while the VPO has better velocity and wall penetration. Despite this, I find these 2 guns to be quite interchangeable, so you should pick which one you think works best. To recap, this gun has great RPM, a good reload speed, and 11-round capacity. However, it requires 2 torso hits to kill at distance, runs out of ammo fast, and it has high recoil. The Sega 953 is an SVDS without the torso kill, lower velocity, a longer reload, less penetration, and just only slightly better RPM. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking when they made this. Maybe someone thought that a gun that's worse than a gun that we already have in the game would somehow be overpowered, so they gave it a bunch of downsides for no reason. What's funny is this thing used to have choke. If you know what choke is, you know how bad that is. This gun's supposed to be for headshotting. If you put choke on it, it loses its accuracy. I'm glad that got removed. Someone had to go in there and convince them, hey, this gun that's meant to headshot people with, you shouldn't give it choke, because if you do that, then it can't headshot people. I'm glad that's fixed, but it's nowhere near being good even after that change. To recap, this gun has decent velocity for an off sniper. 2200 studs per second is the 2nd highest on this list, so that's pretty good, but it's still less than the SVDS. Good penetration, but it's still less than the SVDS. And it has an 11-round capacity, same as the SVDS. 70 RPM. Bad. It doesn't have a damage advantage over the SVDS. It doesn't really have anything over the SVDS. So giving it 10 extra RPM, it needs to have like 100 RPM or more, or like at least if it's going to be this low, it has to have a torso kill to be useful, but they didn't do any of those things. So, and it has a slower reload than the SVDS too. You could say this is a meme gun, but I think it's just like a lazy oversight. And as I said before, no torso kill, so atrocious CQC performance. Bad. The worst on this list. This gun is not good. It's another one of these conversions that offers something desirable at the cost of nearly everything. It has great stats in a lot of areas, but these are completely overshadowed by its velocity. Beyond a certain threshold, the low velocity issue transcends just aiming a little higher. At 1000 studs per second, it can be difficult to even lead targets at close range. The body shot range is also incredibly short at 30.5 studs. In almost all cases, I had to shoot twice anyway. which would have worked far better with weapons like, I don't know, the default Mark 11 or the Beowulf TCR. If you want a universal headshot kill and a CQC torso kill, I'd recommend using a weapon like the SPOS 12 with slugs. Instead of giving up your velocity, you give up your reload speed, a far better trade. If you don't care about having a headshot kill at all ranges and just want one up to a good distance, the DBV12 with slugs is, again, a way better option. To recap, this gun has a torso kill, amazing penetration, good reload speed, and an 11-round capacity. But it has horrendous velocity, and the torso kill range is so short that it's often useless. The Remington 870 with slugs is a decent option for close-range combat. Unfortunately, this is just a slightly worse Henry rifle. Compared to the Henry, it does have a 7-round capacity instead of 5, but its torso kill range is decreased, and its long-range 2-hit kill is less reliable due to the fact that 2 torso hits are required instead of just 1. If you're a low-ranked player who doesn't have access to the Henry, then I see this as a perfectly fine option. However, if you do have the Henry, then in my opinion, there's no reason to use this. As of the new update, the Remington 870 is one of the few shotguns that didn't receive the Paradox Choke. The Paradox Choke is a barrel attachment which improves the performance of slugs. This is a further reason to not use it in my opinion. Before this update, the Remington 870 with slugs was a decent option only because it was overshadowed by other weapons. Now that gap has increased even more due to the fact that this gun was seemingly randomly left out. I guess they flipped the coin or something. I don't know. When it comes to some of these balance decisions, that's probably how they do it. To recap, this gun has a 72.6 stud torso kill range, good penetration, and individual shell loading. The downsides are its slow empty reload, the fact that it requires 2 torso hits to kill at distance instead of just 1 and 1 limb hit. It has no Paradox Choke, and overall it's just a slightly worse Henry 4570. The Henry 4570 is a solid choice for all sorts of applications. Within its torso kill, it's an incredibly effective weapon which can go head-on with low time to kill autos, as long as you're able to shoot first. Beyond this distance, it can be just as effective as long as you're comfortable with its bullet drop. However, for long-range combat, it's not the best option compared to other guns on this list. Overall, the Henry 4570 is a great all-rounder which can be used effectively both at close range and long range. It's basically the Remington 700 of the off-snipers. To recap, this gun has an 80.9 stud torso kill range, good penetration, and individual bullet loading. Its downsides are its slow empty reload and its 5-round capacity. The SPOS 12 with slugs performs very similarly to the Remington 870 with slugs and the Henry. However, out of the 3, it's by far the best for close range combat as well as landing headshots at long range. The only disadvantages the SPOS 12 has when compared to the Henry is the fact that it requires 2 torso hits to kill at max range, and its 1-hit kill torso range is 9 plus 10 studs shorter. Unlike the Remington 870, it actually makes sense for this gun not to have the Paradox Choke. If it did, then it would be overpowered. SPOS 12 with slugs is one of the best guns on this list. To recap, this gun has good RPM for its damage, a 9-round capacity, 59.4 stud torso kill, good penetration, and individual bullet loading. The downsides are its slow empty reload and the fact that it requires 2 torso hits to kill at distance.
I went to sleep, so now my voice is deeper. Anyways, out of all the guns on this list, the 1858 Carbine functions in the most sniper-like manner. When the long barrel attachment is equipped, the velocity jumps up to 2500 studs per second. This is on par with actual snipers, and it makes headshotting at distance incredibly easy. The only true downsides for this gun when compared to real snipers are its low wall penetration and lack of straight pull. If you want to try one of the guns on this list and you're a sniper main, I highly recommend trying the 1858 Carbine. Although this gun is mainly for long-range combat, it can also be useful at very close distances. This is because the 1858 Carbine has a 41 stud torso kill and it fires at 110 RPM. 41 studs isn't a long distance, but it can save you in a lot of situations. To recap, this gun has the highest velocity out of all the guns on this list at 2500 studs per second. It has a 41.5 stud torso kill range, and it has a lot of reserve ammo. The downsides are its obstructive recoil and animations, the fact that it has the lowest penetration out of all the guns on this list, and its capacity is only 6 rounds. The Stevens DB with Slugs is an interesting option due to its burst mode functionality. Although I personally end up not using it very much, it can come in handy when dealing with 50 cal users at long range. Instead of taking the additional time needed to aim a headshot, you can just pop out and body shot them. But I have a huge issue with one aspect of this gun. The optic mounting on this thing is terrible. It might seem minor to some people, but it really throws me off. Something about the sight being so far forward just makes the ADS animation feel wrong. Anyways, compared to the KS-23M with Slugs, the DB is incredibly similar, except it just has less capacity and it shoots faster. Alright, this last part is a recent addition due to the update. For some unknown reason, you lose burst functionality when equipping the Paradox Choke. In my opinion, this is completely nonsensical, and I don't think it's justified. If this is for balancing reasons, I hope whoever decided to do this realizes that a burst from the DB with Slugs would have killed you regardless of the range improvement. I'd still recommend using the Paradox Choke because I don't use the burst anyway, but like, that's just dumb. That makes no sense. That's just stupid. Another coin flip, I guess, right? To recap, this gun has a 93.6 limb kill range. This is with the Paradox Choke, and it has a 116.8 stud torso kill range. It also has good penetration. The downsides are its 2-round capacity, and it's just awful optic mounting. I don't understand why they did that. It used to not be like that. The KS-23M is the slowest firing out of all the guns on this list, but I think it's one of the best. With its impressive damage and range, you can afford to stay back a little bit and still not have to aim for the head. But if you do find yourself fighting at close range, it's not impossible to deal with multiple enemies in rapid succession. Unlike the DB, you aren't limited to a 2-round capacity, but similar to the DB, you still have a guaranteed kill as long as you hit the enemy anywhere. The ability to quickly load a single shell is also very useful. Like all the guns on this list, it can still be useful at long range due to its headshot kill, but since it fires so slowly in comparison, I think it's best at around 70 studs up until the end of its torso kill at 122 studs. Within this distance, it can still body shot where most guns can't. This is one of my most used guns overall, and I cannot recommend it enough. To recap, this gun has an 88 stud limb kill range, a 122 stud torso kill range, individual shell loading, and good penetration. The downsides of it are, it has a slow empty reload, the lowest RPM out of all the weapons on this list, and only a 4-round capacity. The DT-11 with Slugs, while aesthetically appealing, is unfortunately not a great option when compared to other guns on this list. I was personally hoping for a DB with normal optic mounting, but with the downside of no burst mode, but unfortunately the DT-11 with Slugs not only has less range than the DB, but it can't even 2-hit kill to the torso at long range like all of the other guns on this list. This gun does have slightly higher velocity and slightly faster reload speeds than the DB, however these advantages are not nearly enough. I really did try to get them to make changes to the stats of this weapon before release, and at first I succeeded. Originally this gun didn't even have the ability to headshot kill at max range. Luckily they changed this due to my feedback, but for unknown reasons they decided to remove the torso multiplier. This is the only shotgun slug in the game which doesn't have a torso multiplier, and if it had one, its damage stats would be nearly identical to the DB and KS-23M. The only difference being it would require 2 torso hits to kill at max range instead of just 1 torso and 1 limb like the other guns. It goes without saying, but this would clearly not be overpowered. I have no idea why they decided to single out the DT-11 and hold it back. You can't even talk to them directly. I was lucky enough that one contributor agreed with me and decided to talk to them, whoever they are, on my behalf. However, because of this, I was never given any actual reasons, just that decisions were made, most likely by people who, no offense, don't have a lot of experience with these kinds of weapons. To recap, this gun has an 84.8 stud limb kill range and good penetration, with the downsides of a 2-round capacity, less 1-hit kill range than the DB, and no 2-hit kill torso at long range. Applying ratings to this list of guns is a bit tricky since they can excel in different areas. For that reason, I'm just going to divide it into categories and list 3 guns which I recommend you to use for each purpose. And with that, this video is finally over. Thanks for watching all the way through. This video is going to turn out to be like 18-19 minutes. One of the longest videos I've made in a while, really. So, hey, hopefully it does well, right? See ya, goodbye.